Good evening. It's 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the March meeting of the Stratford Wetlands and Wetlands Watercourse meeting commission to order. First order of business, approval of minutes of October 17th, 2018. Does everybody remember that? Any corrections, additions, deletions? Motion, Mr. Waite, second, Mr. McCann. Approved. There's no old business. New business. Is Nick around? Okay. Okay. New business, IWA permit 2008-11 4-lot subdivision on property located on Patricia Drive, site address 175 Patricia Drive, assessor's reference 50.21, block 2, lot 35. Applicant Cummings Enterprises. Is the applicant or his representative here?
He is. Give me a second. I lost my glasses.
Let him go.
Madam Secretary, Mr. Chairman, gentlemen of the Wetlands Commission, good evening. For the record, my name is Nicholas Owen. I reside at 4 Whippoorwill Lane here in Stratford, and I'm here this evening acting on behalf of Cummings Enterprises, who currently has a valid existing wetlands permit for the Patricia Drive property in question. This particular piece of property in this permit has a very storied history, and not to bore you with a long presentation, I will try to be as brief as I can. However, there's certain information I need to get on the record so that you'll be able to make the appropriate decision, and hopefully that will be to extend the permit. When we originally got this wetlands permit back in 2008, it was after 2 very contentious public hearings. And at those public hearings, a number of neighbors came up and addressed their concerns to the commission. And as far as I am concerned, the commission took those neighbors' concerns into heart when they issued that permit. And in part, that permit simply reads that prior to any construction at all, that conditions that were set as part of this permit had to be adhered to. And without reading through the permit itself, they basically said that once we started construction, there would have to be numerous bells and whistles and attachments to this so that the commission would be assured that the wetlands would not be encroached upon, and that each and every step of the way would have to be monitored, which we agreed to. The lots themselves, once we went to develop the lots, each one of those lots, based on the configuration and based on the wetlands that surrounded 3 out of 4 of those lots, would have to come back before this commission for specific approval of a location of a home and a location of the septic system. That was a very important condition. Part of the application, since we felt that the Wetlands Commission had sole jurisdiction over the wetlands on this property, since the legislature enacted a number of years ago that if each town or hamlet or city set up their own wetlands commission, they would be the sole jurisdiction of inland wetlands, not tidal wetlands, inland wetlands. Therefore, we felt that our process of getting our entire wetlands approval was complete, and all we had to do was go through the next step, which was to file an application before the Planning and Zoning Commission for a 4-lot subdivision. However, in the zoning regulation, not in the wetlands regulation, there is a section known as 3.14, and in that zoning regulation, it requires that a developer or a piece of property that is impacted by wetlands that is within 50 feet of a wetlands has to get a waiver from the Board of Zoning Appeals to cross that wetlands, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. It's a double bite of the apple, and as far as I am concerned, it's illegal, and it's arbitrary, and it's abusive, and they are taking the jurisdiction away from the wetlands, that is the Board of Zoning Appeals, by Section 3.14. We filed an application before the Board of Zoning Appeals to waive Section 3.14 because we were told that we would have to hit every one of the jurisdictional requirements prior to taking it to court if we lost in court. Attorney Knott, on behalf of the applicant at that point in time, filed the application before the Board of Zoning Appeals. It was a very contentious hearing. The Board of Zoning Appeals denied the application to cross that wetlands by 4 against, 1 in favor. If you're not aware, the Board of Zoning Appeals needs supermajority, so you need 4 in favor, 1 against in order to get approval. We immediately took that denial to court. The court upheld the denial of the Board of Zoning Appeals, and basically the court felt that we did not prove our case. I then took that denial and I read through it, and it kind of gave us a roadmap on how to get the approval, because there were some mistakes and missteps along the way in our application. I took that application myself in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals. It was 2 or 3 months after the denial from the court, and the board again denied the petition, 3 in favor, 2 against. Therefore, I lost the petition by 1 vote. I immediately took it to court. The court yet again upheld the decision of the Board of Zoning Appeals to deny the crossing. Now, it sat dormant for a year or so, keeping in mind that what I'm telling you within a 4-minute period of time took us a period of almost 4 years to get to where we got at that point in time. We then filed in court a reverse condemnation. In other words, that the town was denying us full use of our property based on a section of their zoning regulation which we thought was archaic, that being Section 3.14 of that regulation. The court had said that since we could build 1 house on the Patricia Drive street, not crossing the wetlands, over here, that it did not, the court in its wisdom did not feel that the town was condemning the entire piece of property and we could use it as 1 lot. Well, that's not what we intend to do. We intend at some point to build a 4-lot subdivision. We're entitled to a 4-lot subdivision under the regulations and have approval from the Wetlands Commission up until this point to do so. In their decision, the court said, and it's a memorandum of decision dated February 6th of this year. On the very last page of its decision, which is very important, I want to get to the exact section. Excuse me. It said, in part, it should be noted that nothing in this decision precludes Success Inc., this property, from claiming that 3.14 lacks a rational basis in an administrative proceeding in which it seeks approval of a 4-lot subdivision. In any such proceeding before the Stratford Board of Zoning Appeals, it would not be necessary to prove that 175 Patricia Drive was without value or that a reasonable investment backing expectations existed under 3.14. So in other words, the court is saying that 3.14 under the zoning regulations should not apply and should not really be included in the zoning regulations, since sole jurisdiction rests in the hands of the Wetlands Commission. And I'd like to submit this document into the record. What I am here tonight is seeking an extension of an approval that this commission already granted. Keeping in mind, you granted 2 previous extensions, and those were based on those circumstances that I just put into the record, that we haven't been able to move forward in a substantial way to get this project going. Now, some of the conditions are important, and Ms. Baytag had enumerated some of the information in the letter that she thought was pertinent. That a new wetlands delineation must be presented to staff prior to approval of commencement of work on the site. I indicated to you that that was part of the original conditions. And since we've been unable to do any work on the site, we have been unable to meet that condition. So that commission, that particular item remains dormant. We've done nothing, so we have nothing to delineate yet for your consideration when we go to do the individual building lots. The applicant must continue to pay the annual compliance fee of $210 as per the standard condition of the original permit. That we have done each and every year consistently, and Ms. Baytag can verify that. The permit extended to April 18, 2019. The applicant, however, must show substantial progress within the following years as the approval by the Inland Wetlands Commission in order for the permit to be extended until 2020. Otherwise, the permit will be considered expired. So therefore, if we can't meet the conditions by doing work on the property, then our permit will expire. Well, we're in what comes first, the chicken or the egg? We have been unable to do any work since we've been unable to get approvals yet. Consistent with the items 1 through 4, correspondence dated May 8th, please be advised that every effort has been made to obtain approval for a 4-lot subdivision consistent with the planning and zoning regulations of the town of Stratford. Now, those are statements by me, and an application has been filed, and Ms. Baytag knows this, with the Planning Commission for a 4-lot subdivision. Now, what we are doing, and we have realized through consulting with several attorneys, we don't really need to go to the Board of Zoning Appeals at this point to get a waiver to cross the wetlands. If the town is correct, and 3.14 is the standard for crossing a piece of property that's already been approved by the Wetlands Commission, which we assert very strongly that the sole jurisdiction for wetlands approvals in this town, based on the fact that we have a Wetlands Commission, rest in your Wetlands Commission, we don't need it, and the Zoning Commission, the Planning Commission, the administrator has accepted our application for a 4-lot subdivision. So, we will be on the agenda for a 4-lot subdivision in the next month or so. I'm sure that the neighbors are going to come out in force and scream and yell and jump and rant and rave because they don't want to see anything there, but we have a 4-lot subdivision in a 1-acre zone, and each one of these lots is larger than an acre. It's a nice piece of property, and it has plenty of land that can be developed along the lines of the approval that was fought very hard to get this permission to approve. You put a lot of stipulations on it, and we don't want to lose the approval based on the fact that we have been unable to move forward because we have been thwarted legally and jurisdictionally to get this job done. Now, if the Planning Commission approves this, our subdivision, and if someone takes it to court, our feeling is based on that court decision that I just gave you and the pertinent part I read from you, the court is going to knock out the appeal and will be able to move forward, and 3.14 in that zoning regulation will be knocked out. What is interesting, even though it's not in your purview, but it is slightly in your purview, the only prohibition in the zoning regulation in 3.14 and where you need a waiver is a subdivision. I could go build a church tomorrow on this property and I wouldn't need to get a waiver. I can build an office building. I wouldn't need to get a waiver. So 3.14 is not being adjudicated properly, and the court pretty much says that. So that's why we feel confident. And therefore, based on that, I respectfully request that you guys extend this permit. And it's not without saying that if you in fact do, and I hope you extend it, that we may be before you again before this is over for an additional extension because we expect another lengthy court battle. Although be aware that I've been advised by an attorney that the filing of an appeal or the adjudication of a lawsuit based on this stays the date, and that clock starts running after that case has been fully adjudicated one way or the other. Now, we did file this application for extension in a timely manner. I think Ms. Baytag will agree to that. We were supposed to appear before you last month. There was a half-inch of snow, and nobody wanted to come out. So here we are this evening. And if there's any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them. I do have a question for Tina. I'm sorry, sir. May I don't know if I submitted to you you did ask for, and I apologize. One thing we did do, because I thought it was important, and Ms. Baytalk thought it was important, to get an updated delineation of the surrounding wetlands to make sure that they haven't increased, decreased, or if there have been any substantial changes. And I do have a letter dated February 20, 2019 from William L. Kenny, PWS, PLA. I don't pretend to know what that means. And he has indicated in this letter there has been no change in the wetlands delineation. And I'd like to submit that into the record if I might. And with that, I conclude my presentation. If someone would like to...
Mr. Owens?
Happy
Yes.
to-
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
I'm assuming you're going to go with septic because there is no public sewer attachment in that area?
That is correct, and all of those septic systems are laid out in a preliminary fashion on those lots, and that was part of the requirements when we filed our application before the Wetland Commission. Short answer is yes.
Mr. Blake?
Is there a reserve area for that, for those septic tanks?
Yes, there is, and it's delineated on the plan, sir.
I didn't see the plan.
Yes. Any other questions? Now, I'd like to ask Tina to go through a little history and then her
Yes.
recommendations.
So, obviously, you guys all went through the permit extension request that was submitted by Mr. Owen, and you know what the terms of the extension were for this previous year. So, based on those two documents, upon review of the request for permit extension, this is what I offer. As per condition number 1 of the previous extension, the applicant claims they will be supplying a new wetlands delineation for review at the March 20th, 2019 regular meeting. Once received, this may be compared to the existing delineation for the property. So obviously we just received this document from William Kenny stating that as of a site investigation conducted on February 20th, he says, or he claims that the wetlands boundaries have not changed. Continuing on, condition number 2 of the previous extension has not been met. Plans for development of each lot have not been provided to the Commission for review and approval. Also note that contrary to the applicant's assertion that plans for lot development are to be approved administratively, condition number 14 of the permit clearly states that approval will be granted by the Commission. And after listening to your testimony, it seems that you're holding off on submitting those until you're actually able to get somewhere with the zoning commission. Is that correct?
Right, we don't have approval to do anything yet.
I understand that, but at the same time, our review of an application can proceed without anything having to do with the zoning commission application that you're putting forward. So you could still technically submit an application to us and we can review them. Because what if we were to receive an application from you for the 4 separate lots and we denied them anyway?
But that's a possibility. However, here's the issue. This is again the chicken and the egg. If we present our petition to the Planning Commission and they say to us, we want to be able to have you move within your footprint of your home to the left 5 feet, to the right 4 feet, then we have to come back before you again. I'm trying to avoid all of that and doing it one time.
I understand, but that's kind of the nature of the beast here.
Well, the
And
nature of the beast of the commissions and the way we do things lately have gotten very complicated.
My regulations are separate from the zoning regulations, and all we're going to be concerned with are upholding the wetlands regulations.
All right, so
for the
to your comment, you are absolutely correct. We have not submitted anything as of yet because we don't have approval to do anything as of yet. And once we get approval to do something, we will be back in front of the commission.
Well, you did have the approval for the past decade to put in from us, to put in the roadway and the sewer infrastructure.
Couldn't do it.
Obviously you couldn't, but you did have the approval.
We have,
from the
right, we
Wetlands
have the approval,
Commission.
but that doesn't help me.
I know, but they're two separate entities, and I can't
No.
do anything about the zoning regulation side. And to be honest.
You're right, you can't do anything without this, wait a minute, you can't do, and I'm not trying to be abrasive. You can't do anything without the zoning regulation side. I can't do anything without the zoning regulation side. So first I have to get my zoning approval before I come back before you guys and say, okay, here we go. What do you need from us now?
I get where you're coming from, but at the same time, I can only look at it from the inland wetland side. That's
Okay.
our jurisdiction, and in my opinion, you could still feasibly give us an application for each one of those lots that you wanted to develop.
Why would I do that when I don't have approval to do that? Because they are not lots yet. They are not subdivided. So right now, even though we have approval from the Wetlands Commission to do a 4-lot subdivision, that's the Wetlands Commission. So I cannot come before you with an application for each one of the lots that hasn't been approved by the appropriate body in the jurisdiction, which is the Planning Commission.
And what I'm saying is, I can't do anything about that.
I know you can't. Yes, you
There's
can.
nothing I can do.
You can extend my permit.
All right, well, let's go back.
Okay.
So when that permit was originally issued, it was well before I got here.
Right.
So we're talking well over a decade ago at this point.
Okay?
That original application, when it comes down to it, there had to have been, if they were to deny that application, they would have had to prove that there was going to be a significant negative impact from putting in the the roadway and all the stormwater infrastructure. If they couldn't prove that beyond a reasonable doubt there was going to be no effect on the wetlands, then they have to approve the application by the wording of our regulations. I can't do anything about the fact that zoning regulations are more stringent than our own within the 50-foot review of the wetlands area. So
The commission did the right thing. They approved it. But while you approved our application for a wetlands approval for a potential 4-lot subdivision, we don't have approval for that 4-lot subdivision. So let's just say tomorrow I brought my equipment out and I cut a road in. I'm going to get a cease and desist and a fine, and I'm going to be in court. So
Correct.
the proper step, and the only step I have, is to file the application for a 4-lot subdivision before the Planning Commission, which we did, and get approval, and then I can start. And then I can come back to the commission and say, okay, we've commenced operations. What do you need now?
believe me, I understand exactly where you're coming from, but I also can't do anything about the fact that it took 15 years to get here.
I can't either.
There's nothing I could do. So honestly, I mean, this is something that's going to be it's left up to the commissioners to decide really on whether to extend or not. In my personal opinion, it's just been so long at this point that since we've even seen those plans, that I don't know if it jives currently with other applications that we've seen coming through. And I think it's important that we stay. Why are you shaking your head?
Other applications that you have seen coming through, not on this piece. I don't care
No,
about.
not
I don't
this
care about
piece.
your other applications
But
and
we
other
have to
projects.
treat,
No,
at least
don't, no.
from the time
Don't
I
give, no.
started, we
Don't
have
give me that you have to
every
treat it this.
application the same.
This already has approval. We fought very hard for this approval. We
15 years ago.
No, I don't care. I don't care if it was 20 years ago. We complied in full.
But conditions also change. Conditions also change. And I have this letter from William Kenny telling me that it hasn't changed, but I also don't see any hard evidence of that fact other than his word stating that. it hasn't changed. Did he go out there and walk the line?
Yes, he did. He went out there and he actually went out and checked the delineations to make
And
sure
he
it was
did the
accurate.
soil
And you
sampling?
want to know why I had him do that? Because I knew you would ask that specific question.
And so, are there soil samples that go with this?
I
that
don't know if
show?
there are or not, Tina.
So,
Yeah, I'm sorry, my name is Tim Beat, I'm from
Oh, Tim,
William
come
Kenny
on.
Associates. Yeah, good evening, my name is Tim Veet, I'm from William Kenny Associates, I'm here on behalf of William Kenny. He went out on February 20th and did conduct a delineation. He's a professional wetland scientist and a soil scientist, and he determined that the line was substantially the same. So we did not take any samples, but we did use an auger and a shovel in accordance with the state law.
You came up with no drawing, no soils types that you could represent to us?
Do you not have a
It's just
report
a
on file?
confirmation that the flags were essentially the same? Is that what you're saying?
Yes, the flags are essentially the same. I mean, I have a report with me if you don't have one in your file.
But you did no soil testing. You just admitted you didn't bring an auger with you. Or you didn't.
No, I said we did bring an auger.
Okay, and you took soil samples?
William Kenny said he did, yes. I'm here to speak on behalf of him.
I understand that, but normally, there's at least a field log when you're a soil scientist and you take a sample, you log down where it is and what type you've found, what type of soil type. To see if they
There
confirm-
is a report.
There's a report on file, Bill. You guys have one.
This March report is on file?
I don't have a report that goes along with his.
No, not with that one. You have the original report from the original application.
The original report from the original application in 2008, whenever it was delineated, I have that mapping
Okay.
from 2008. But what Bill is saying is, do you have anything to physically show that the borings that were taken on February 20th match up to the lines from 2008?
I mean, we sampled the area, and they fell in line with what's shown on that drawing. I believe you have certain areas that are a fill, a 308. Some areas that are, I believe we have, what is it, a 3, Ridgebury, Leicester, Whitman. I mean, the wetland soils are the same. The line, according to William Kenny, is the same. The upland soils are the same type. We could provide you with another report, but it would essentially be just a redating because the line is, according to Bill, the line is the same. I mean, you'd have to speak to him about it, but we discussed it, and that's what he said, that there has been no substantial change. No natural event has changed it. No man-made event has changed it. The hydrology is the same. So that's what I can tell you at this time. That's the evidence we have. I mean, we were there on the ground.
I would be much more comfortable in seeing something in writing and seeing some sort of drawing,
I agree with that.
something transposed onto the plan with a date and the certification and the signature of Mr. Kinney.
I would
Okay,
agree with that.
we can do that. So if you would like to continue the public hearing until next month, be more than happy to supply that information.
Well, quite frankly, I think it's almost essential that
Handed this to me.
we continue this. I personally am very uncomfortable with trying to make a vote this evening,
Okay?
which,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
I just said, he said if we would like to continue this, well, it's not a public hearing.
I'm sorry, if you'd like to continue this hearing?
Yeah,
we'll be
well,
more than happy to
this,
supply the
we would have to table this item and bring it up, put it on the next agenda. But I was just saying, Mr. Chairman, that I would be very uncomfortable in trying to come to any sort of decision this evening.
Can I ask a question? It says here, on a February 20th, 2019 letter, WKA delineated the on-site wetland and watercourse system on July 2008. A description of our findings, approximate location, blah, blah, and a wetland and watercourse delineation letter. So, all he's saying on this February 20th document, he's attesting that the prior delineation letter is still accurate.
That is correct.
He's not reissuing it, and that is to your point.
Well,
Correct?
again, but this is not our first rodeo. I mean, we've had redelineations of wetlands repeatedly. I mean, and every time we ask for a redelineation of a wetland by a soil scientist, we get something that looks like the original document, but, you know, to that detail anyway. There may be some subtle changes, there may not be subtle changes, but at least we have a document with a signed, on a
Well,
signed plan.
What you're
that we
saying is you
can
have a
look at,
reissued
that we
document
can-
with a current date
if
on it.
I mean,
Okay.
legally, that's the way it's usually done. And, you know, I think we want to be, at least I do, want to be as comfortable in my vote as I possibly can.
Okay.
And when that,
And we are happy to comply.
And while it doesn't particularly relate to inland wetlands, it may become an issue down the road for you, the NDDB review. Did that get brought up at a planning commission meeting?
We haven't had our meeting yet.
Oh, okay. Well,
We just filed the application.
I was speaking with the planning administrator, and she had noted that this area.
Oh, yes,
Okay.
we are investigating that.
Okay.
As to the turtles and the frogs and the bugs
Correct.
and the bees and, yeah, yes.
But it can take a while to get those reviews.
And the
So-
turtles with the Rhode Island license plates on them.
It can take a while to get those reviews completed, so you need to touch base with DEEP sooner rather than later.
We are already in touch with them.
Very good.
Mr. Chairman, we need a motion to table till next month. I'd like to make a motion.
We have a motion to table, we have a second. Second, Mr. McCann, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion's tabled till next month, or,
I'm going to ask the wetland agent if you could send a written confirmation of what we just did to the applicant with a detailed list of what we want,
I
so
will.
there's no confusion at the next meeting.
I certainly will.
Ladies and gentlemen, have a nice evening and thank you.
you. All right, next item on the agenda, staff report.
There was one administrative permit, sorry, there was one administrative permit issued between October 17th of 2018 and March 20th, 2019. IWWA permit number 2019-1A, demolition of below-grade structures that previously supported a drop test tower with 8,300 square feet of disturbance to upland review area of wetlands. This was at Sikorsky Aircraft.
Oh, yeah.
On an area that was already paved. It was a pretty simple administrative permit. They put out silt fencing and hay bales in an area around the area of demolition to ensure that any nearby watercourses were not going to be disturbed and that no silt was going to be getting into any of the catch basins on site. It was a pretty easy sign-off, but if anybody wants any further detail on it, I have the whole application package. They're usually pretty good at Sikorsky about abiding by all the rules. It's more procedural than anything, I'd say. What was that?
That's it?
That's it. That's all I've got.
Commissioners forum?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
I have a question for the wetland agent. The application that we received, and forgive me, I don't know the exact address, but Whippoorwill Lane, that rear lot where there was a violation,
Oh, 350.
and that we were supposed to see a
Was that the tree cut
remediation
one?
Correct.
within 6 months of,
That
Our-
was nowhere.
that has gone nowhere. Do we have a bond on that? Did we post a bond for that?
We required that they submit a bond, but I can't remember if they submitted one or not.
Well, I
We
like to
required
move-
that they
I
submit a
don't
bond, and we
think-
gave them a $500 fine,
They-
as I
We gave them
recall.
a fine, and then I think we told them to submit the bond after they had given us the amount that it was gonna cost to do all the plantings and the erosion controls.
Because it would be a percentage.
Correct, and I don't think they ever went anywhere, because I think zoning,
Well, that has no relevance on the violation.
I agree, and so I need to get on that.
I mean, we'll pull their, I would like to move that bond be pulled.
But that's the thing, I don't know if they even submitted it yet. I don't know if they had submitted
And
it.
if they haven't, we'll put a lien on the property.
Exactly, that's where it would go. that's where it would have to go.
Right.
Because they're not gonna submit $25,000
Then-
bond. And this is the issue that I thought was gonna happen. I didn't think they had the money to do anything in the first place. And so then when we approved our application, they went to planning and zoning to get their house, got denied. So I'm like, well, they're just gonna walk away from this if they're
Right.
not gonna be able to get the house that they want, which is exactly what happened. So they never came back to do the restoration, they never came back to do anything.
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we proceed with a lien on the property, that we contact the town attorney to go forward with that.
Definitely.
We have a motion. Is there a second? All in favor?
All in
Aye.
favor?
So Tina will take care of that, correct?
I mean, that's just sticking their finger in their eye.
I don't know.
I mean, they don't think, I mean, they just think, excuse the expression, that we're wimps, but, you know.
Well, I mean,
I knew when the guy was here.
It's actually
anything
kind
else under Commissioners Forum? Anything else under Commissioners?
Can I, yes, Mr. Chairman, through
Yes,
you.
you have one more shot.
I would just like to comment on some of the things we heard today. Excuse me. 3.14 is a planning regulation. It has nothing, you're right, it has really nothing to do with wetlands other than the fact that it's a wetland. But it's how you want your community and how you want your subdivision neighborhoods to look. It's planning. And I think his analogy of a church shows that exactly. Because they want the neighborhoods to have that diversity and all the rest of the stuff. And a church, yeah, they, you know, maybe not so much. But it's a planning regulation. It does have environmental implications, but mainly how the neighborhood looks. It's part of our 10-year conservation and development plan to have this included in their reviews. So, you know, it's the saying that, trying to say that they did something illegally is completely incorrect.
It is incorrect, and the court has upheld that numerous times.
Well, 3 times.
Yep, and what's also frustrating to me, which the applicant doesn't seem to get, perhaps they haven't been able to do anything in 15 years because it shouldn't be there. The town regulations show that this is not the place for it. So, I mean, that seems to be the reason they keep getting held up. It's because, like Bill said, it's about the community character. And if it doesn't fit with the zoning regulations, it doesn't fit with the zoning regulations. But I also don't agree with what he said, that he can't submit an application for the 4 separate lots. If he wanted to, he could. He absolutely could. He could come before us with it, and we can approve it or deny it. But he still has to get through the zoning commission. It's 2 separate entities.
But it's the same, it's the same process.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a little confused as to what he feels his real jeopardy is.
But you mean it's the same process every single time?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, this is not anything new to him.
There's no real jeopardy. I mean, he's just, other than the fact that he wants it all at once, but he does not necessarily have to have it done that way and still come out with the same product.
And I don't think they've ever shown that that for whatever reason they can't put a one-lot development, a one-house development where it is. And that was one of the things that was brought up in one of the, I think it was in the memorandum of decision that was issued by Superior Court. They said that the applicant, you know, is more than welcome to submit an application for one home on one lot.
Yeah, well, Mr. Owen is not a stupid man. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows that if you move a house on a lot, if you've given us a single lot subdivision, and you've given us a footprint and a septic system and all the rest of that, and if you move the house a foot, you're coming back to us for an approval. I mean, we look at all those things, and we don't even have that envelope to look at. And to suggest that we're just going to say, okay, we don't care really where you put those houses or really where you put those septic systems, doesn't really conform to what our regulations and our tasks are. That's all I'm going to say.
But you know, it would be interesting if they wanted to do low-income housing, then the state gets involved.
The state gets involved, but the state does not override wetlands.
Well, he's got approval to put the road in, right? He can put the road in,
Yeah.
to the house, to the driveway or whatever, no?
They can't get the driveway.
Okay. Right. All right, so he can't
He's
do,
only able to, right now, with the permit that,
He could make a driveway for one lot onto the street, whatever street it is.
start some, but you didn't start nothing. You were approved for one house, but you don't want to do that, you
I
want
don't
four.
think he can even, he can't start the road until he has permission from, until he gets the approval from the zoning commission.
Right, for the 4 lots.
For any of
He
it.
could do the front. Right. He can't start that. Right.
Oh, because that portion of it doesn't cross the wetland boundary.
Right, right.
Yeah, but then he would have to come to us for a modification of the original permit, because then the road would be going
It may be
a
that,
quarter of the
it
distance.
may be that if he puts a single lot in, the driveway for that house makes it impossible to put the road in for the other, you know?
Yeah,
I don't know. Anyways.
10 years.
So anyway, it's tabled, so.
It's just like, I'll just reiterate, we can only look at it from an inland
Right.
wetland standpoint. We have to focus on what our regulations are and doing the right thing by our
Exactly.
regulations, and we can't worry about the zoning side.
Nope. All right, moving right along. Next item on the agenda. Adjournment.
Oh,
We have a motion?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second? In favor? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.